The first thing I forget to, okay, I will configure this interface as my management for now. Okay, okay, R1. Just wait, I guess we need to reconfigure the configuration like the context and the all configuration. We have not saved any configuration on this firewall. I hope guys you remember how to configure the context. Okay, okay. And now the first of all you need to change the mode of the firewall. If you check, we have single mode right now. Okay, it's already multiple because of the last configuration. If I want to check show, I guess there is no, we have context configuration already here. If you check show interface IP brief, okay, interface IP address configuration we can check inside the in so we need to move inside the context is C1, right? And here you can check we have IP address. Okay, so like this interface is part of network 10 and this interface is part of network 30. And similar, if I move inside the context 2 and we check the, here we have 20 and 40, right? So you can check here is network 20 with R2 and here is network 40 with R4. So we have already configuration. Just I'm trying to make sure now, like I'm going to configure some telnet configuration on the firewall. So I need to move into the system context. Wait a minute, is it in the system context? No, it's in the particular context. Okay, so we need to move inside the, like any context, like I'm using the C1 right now, and we need to enable telnet for anyone on my inside interface, right? So this is the inside interface if you check, and AAA authentication telnet and console, that is local must be in capital. Okay, if you remember, and username is admin and the password is Cisco. So we configured the configuration. Okay, and now let me try from the R1. So from R1 I will try to make telnet of this one, 10.10. So we can see the telnet connection is up now and we are getting the remote of context 1, right? So in that case, if you try to configure anything, so that you can configure inside context 1, right? If I see I have these interfaces and IP in context 1, right? But if I do change to context C2, so in that case it will give you a not valid command, not valid in current execution space. So that means if you have normal context like C1, and in that context you try to access the router, so you can't move into the other context, right? So during the management of the device, if you have login through the dedicated context which is not the admin, and in that case you can't move to any another context, you can only do the configuration of the same context where you have login, right? Like C1. Okay, but if I will do the telnet configuration in my admin context, okay, so what I can do, I can change context admin. Okay, and right now we are using now telnet configuration here in my inside interface. Come on, what's wrong with it? Telnet. Okay, admin don't have actually this interface. So what I will do, I will go to the context C1 again, and I will make admin to this context and not here again, my bad. We need to move into the system, because system have power to give the administration access, right? And under, and you can see we can give the name of C1. See, admin context C1, so you have to move under the system area, and under system area, like normally we create the context configuration, if you remember. Similar, using the same area system, you have now admin context, and you can define here name is C1, which is already created, right? So this time if I move, okay, let me move here, and I'm going to exit the connection on R1 and telnet. So now we have access here, password. So we have again login to this context C1, right? And these are interface, but if I try to change, so see, we can change the context, right? We can jump into the another context, and if you check the, now you can see here we have different interface IP, because this is context C2, right? And before that we were into C1, right? Now again I can change into C1, so again we jumped into the C1, right? So that means if you have some dedicated management interface, okay, and if you are login with admin context, the name can be anything of that context. If you check on the firewall, show context, and you can check admin don't have star this time. Why? Because admin is now like a normal context in this case. But if you check C1 have that star, so that means C1 is the dedicated, right? So like admin can also have here different name, okay? Admin context also can have different name, okay? So it's not only about that admin must have admin name. Admin can be anyone. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, so now suppose I will do one thing, clear configuration all. What is the meaning of that command? So it will remove all the configuration of the device, right? And you will see it will even remove the all context system, okay, removing all context in the system, context admin, context 2, context 1, and every configuration is removed, right? And what will happen in that case? Any idea, guys? Okay, wait. So if you have removed configuration and you are going to check show context, so there is no context now, even not the admin context, if you want to do something through the admin context, right? So what you are going to do now, suppose you are going to reload the firewall. Let me save, okay, maybe you think after reloading the firewall I will get the configuration. So like we want to save the configuration. Just a minute. Okay, and now reload the configuration, reload the device. Okay, so just if we reload the device, so can we get the admin context to do some configuration? Okay, let's see. Just wait for a minute, let the device boot first, then we will see like the context are still here, because we are just assuming to be get back the admin context, right? Okay, so now check the context. So still we don't have context. If you check the, still the firewall is into the mode, right? We need to check the mode. So still the firewall is into multi-mode. So if you by mistake, if you did clear configuration all on the device, and now you don't have any context but device into multi-mode, because by default you have admin context, if you remember. And now what I want to configure something. So we are under the system. So what we can do, I can move to the context. And how I can move to the context? First of all, I need to create the context. So we need to create the context, and I have to create here now, like give any name like C1, right? But see, identify admin context first using the admin context command, right? So you need admin context first, then you can create other context, because that is dependency. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I need to define admin context is like my admin. Okay, so because admin is not also here, the admin context, so it will now create that context. And if you check, so we have admin context now, right? And you can see that is in routed mode, but URL is not entered here. So I need to define the URL, moved under the context admin config URL admin.cfz, right? So this is my file name. Okay, and you will see admin context will take some time to come up, and please wait. So maybe it will take some time, maybe the device have some configuration in that we will get back. Okay, and if you check, show disk 0, so we have these context as well, C1 and C2, right? So if I'm going to configure now, like context, that is in capital C1. Okay, and we have now config URL here, right? Config URL is what is the name is c1.cfz, right? And see, the device is giving us some error. And what is the error is maybe related to the configuration or some interface. Okay, so these are the error we are getting, or maybe that is configuration, because it will give some configuration back. And now I'm going with context c2. Okay, and that is config URL is, I guess it's c2, right? C is in small. And see, we are getting here also some errors. And if you want to check now, change to context c1, right? So we moved into the c1, show interface IP brief. Still the interfaces are not allocated, actually that is the problem. So what I need to do, I need to move into the change system. Under the system, now I'm moving configuration terminal, context c1, right? And now here we can allocate the resources interface, and that is eth0 and eth1, right? And exit context to interface 2 and 3, right? So we have allocated. Now if you check, so context, and we have interfaces again. Okay, and those are in routed. And now let me check again, do we have configuration? So just change to context c1. Okay, and show interface IP brief. IP is not here because IP is removed. And the second thing, we forget to no shut down the interfaces, okay, in the system. So just move again. Okay, interface eth0, no shut down, 1 no shut down, 2 no shut down, 3 no shut down, right? And show interface IP brief. So we have no shut down all the interfaces. Now we can move to the change to context c1, right? So if you check here, show interface IP brief, interfaces are up, but again we need to configure the interface eth0, and you can give the name if is inside, IP address is 10.10. okay, exit interface eth1, name if is outside. Okay, and IP address is 30.10/24. okay, so we configured the context 1. Similar, let's configure the context 2. So where we have interface 2 and 3, 20 and 40 network. First of all, change to context c2, interface eth2, no shutdown is already there. Define the name if, which is inside. IP address is 20.10/24. And another interface is eth3, name if is outside, IP address that is 40.1.1.10. okay, and now we have done here, show interface IP brief. Okay, these two IPs here, and if you move into the context c1, show interface IP brief, and we have these IPs here, right? So we did the configuration again, and you can see how we can get back to the context, and how we can create if we remove the configuration by mistake. Okay, hope this is clear. And we have seen how we can change the admin context here. So now next point is, if this is clear about the normal, so I can try to show you some configuration under the context. Or there is one more thing, like that is known as actually guys, okay, change to system. Okay, so in system check, here we have one thing, that is known as class, show run class actually. Okay, so guys, in show run class you can see we have something that is known as class default, and class default is using resources that allocates to every context, like all 0 MAC address, ASDM, telnet and SSH. So these are the uh, limitation, right? So like how many resources you can utilize, but this is the default class which is for everyone, right? How? Let me show you guys. Show context. So under that you can check, we have here class, that is the default. So that means whatever configuration exists here, so that can be used by any one of them. So in that case, if one context is using all the connections, like here we have 5 SSH connection, that is the limit, right? So under that if C1 is going to be utilize all the SSH connections, so C2 cannot use the SSH connection. Why? Because everyone is part of the default class, everyone is part of the default class. So here we have to allocate to everyone accordingly, like how many hardware resources required in this particular context. Like C1 needs some other context configuration and C2 need other resources configuration. Okay, so for that, under the system I can go and I can define here my class, like class is C1. So this is C1, right? I'm defining for C1, name is C1 for class, but you can give here limit resource, and you can define like connections. So connections means how many connections can be there in your table. So we can define like 100. Okay, and after that I can give here telnet connections, I can give here like 3 telnet connection. Okay, and after that I can show SSH connection, there is limitation of 5. If I give 10, it will give me the error, right? The system capacity is 100, so we can give range from 1 to 5. So I'm giving here suppose 4. Okay, and after that limit resource, I can use telnet SSH routes. So how many routes we want to utilize, like I'm giving here 100 routes. Okay, and after that you can give about escalate table. Escalate have like 100 connections only. Okay, so that how you can give the resources. Show run class. So now we have here class C1 which have these resources, 100 connections of con, 3 telnet connection, 4 SSH, 100 routes and 100 escalate entries, right? And now I can assign this entry to my specific context. So I can move under the context, not under the context. I am in system configuration where we have created the context C1. I'm using the same one, and the class is, the name of the class is C1, that is small c and 1. Okay, so I copy paste it. Just a minute. Oh, my bad. Okay, class, and we need to give here name actually. We already give the name, but it moves into the class. Just let me check. That is not changed actually. What I did? Oh, it's the command is separate, guys. My bad. So move under the context. C1. Okay. Here is command member. Okay. Member. The class. So the class is C1. Yeah, this is the command. show context, and now you can see the C1 have now different resources, right? So that how you can specify the resources in your command, and those are going to be used by the router, not by the router, sorry, the firewall context. Okay, is it easy?
Okay.
Okay, so we have to move
Okay.
under the systems, and under system I configure the class, whatever you will configure under the class, and then move to the context. Like we are not changing the area, we are still in the system area, just I am moving under the context where we define the hardware resources. So just move in that and define the member, and after member there is name of the class which we configured above. So this is our class, so this is our class which have all these hardware resources, right? C1, so that is with member command here. Okay, that is with member command. So I hope this is clear to all. Okay guys, so now there are even some limitations. Okay, so now we just discussed the few basics things, like how we can enable few more features in that, or the configuration, right? Like how to do NAT configuration in security context, right? In security context. Okay, so like we just discussed the normal traffic flow, if you remember, like we just passed the normal traffic in both contexts, C1 and C2. But here how we can do the NAT configuration in that case, like if I want to do NAT configuration. Okay, so let me try. So we have two contexts in that case, right? The one context is context C1, so in which I will try to configure the static net, right? And in context 2 I will try to configure the dynamic net, right? Okay, so these two things I am going to be configure in separate and separate, and then we will analyze the count table, right? Then we will analyze the count table on both context, like how it's visible, are the both are same or identical. Okay, yeah, both are identical in that case, because we are talking about separate context. So let's see. Okay, so we have now R1. Let me open all the routers, R2, R3 and R4. Okay, so now if you try to check, those are reachable or not. Okay, so before that we need to check, we have here the routes are already here, but we can check the connectivity from here. Okay, if I will try to ping 30.1.1.3, so that should not be reachable, because I need to enable one feature here. Okay, change to context C1, and that is fix up protocol ICMP, right? And change to context to, and again same command. Okay, so this time we can see we have communication here, right, on R1, and similar we can try on R2, ping 40.1.1.4 the IP address of R4, so it must reachable. Yeah, so the traffic is passing through both the context, and now I am going to configure NAT on the firewall, and in that case we want to make sure R3 and R4 is giving telnet connection to both the routers. And before that we need to enable, let me check do we have telnet configuration here? Show run pipe section line vty. Yeah, we have telnet configuration, and just let me put here username admin privilege 15 and the password is Cisco. Okay, and similar I will do with R4. So just paste it. My bad. Okay, now we did the configuration, and now let's configure under the context C1 first. Okay, so here we need to create object group, and this is our like static net, right? And under that I want to net the user 10.1 net inside outside. Okay, and statically into 30.1.1.10, right? Wait a minute, address overlap with outside interface address. Yeah, that what we are trying to do here. Net policy is not downloaded. Address overlaps with outside interface. Okay, my bad. We never allow into the same interface IP, which is the physical interface, right? Because that is not allowed, even if you remember we discussed about that. And now next I'm going to configure net for context 2. So context 2 have now similar object network, but we are using here PAT. Okay, and here I'm going to be used for full network subnet, that is my 20 subnet. Okay, and here we have net inside outside and dynamic. We need to define the interface because it's going to be used the outside interface, right? So now net is configured. If you check show net, we have here configuration, right? So that is under section 2 because twice net is in section 1. So we have inside to outside source dynamic. We are using pat1 in the interface, and similar if you check change to context C1. What's wrong? Yeah, the name is not good, not valid. And now check show net, and we have here inside to outside, but this is static into this IP address, right? So we did for both, and now let's try telnet connection from here. Telnet 20.1.1.2. my bad, I'm using the wrong IP. We need to telnet to R3 because R1 is going to take telnet of R3 and R2 is going to take telnet of R4, right? So just wait until that I can do from R2. Telnet the 40.1.1.4, and we have admin and password is Cisco. So we are getting R4 connection here, and now to the telnet for 30.3 R3, username admin, password is Cisco, and we have here also connection, right? So now if you check in the con table on both, so this is C1 and check show con, and we can check here 30.3 have connection with this one, and we can do the long command. Okay, in long command you can see 10.1 is going to be translated with to 30.1.1.11 because of static, because we configured 30.11 for static, right? Okay, and similar if you check in context 2, and same command, and now we have here 20.2 is translating into 40.1.1.10. Why? Because we are using here pat, so pat is in the same IP address, pat is into the same IP address. Is it clear, guys? Let me wipe the router. Let's wipe it. Come on. Okay, so we have just wipe out the router, sorry, wipe out the firewall, and we will configure it again, right, with the context. And we removed the R4. So in this scenario we have R1, R2 and R3. R1 is part of context 1, R2 is part of context 2, but R3 is like this interface is now shared interface, which will be member of the context 1 and the context 2. And in both we have separate IP, like here I am going to be used, like let me configure the IP of it. Here is .10 IP, okay, and make it duplicate. Here we have IP of 20, sorry, make it 11 or 20, anything, okay. So those we are going to be used here. And now let me configure, maybe the firewall is up, okay, just wait for few seconds. Now so we need to change the mode first, right? So mode is multiple, so the device will boot again with the multiple mode. Okay, wait for 2 more minutes. So till now I can configure the R3, okay, because R3 I guess have just default route if you remember from the last configuration. So now just remove that route because we need dedicated routes, okay. And I'm giving a route for network 10. The next hop is 30.10, route of 20, 30.11. Okay, so we did routing on R3 show IP route. If you check, so it have network 10 and 20. So 30 is in C1 and 30.11 is into C2 context. Okay, so now we have here, so let's start with the configuration. So we are under the uh, system area. So if you check show context, so we have here admin context. Let me create the context C1. Okay, and the first is config URL. So URL is c1.cfz. Okay, and allocate interface. Interface is eth0 and even eth1, because eth1 is part of both. Exit context c2 config URL. We need to give the URL name c2.cfz, the file name, and even allocate here interface one, which is in your shared, and eth2, which is belong to R2, right? So this is eth2 and eth1. So eth1 is part of both. If you check, so what we can do, we can check here, exit and show context, and you can check C1 have interface eth0 and 1, and C2 also have interface eth1 and 2, right? So now same interface is part of both. So now let's make the interfaces now set first before moving into the context. Okay, we now set down all the interfaces, and now we can check show interface IP brief. So all the interfaces are of those we are using in the diagram. Okay, so now next move to the context C1 to configure the physical IP address on the interfaces. So interface eth0, name if is inside, IP address 10.1.10 and subnet mask, interface eth1, name if outside. Okay, so this remain outside for both, and IP address 30.1.1.10. Okay, now next if you check, before moving, show interface IP brief. So we did here 10.10 and 30.10 on the shared interface, and similar change to context C2, interface eth2, the LAN interface, name if inside, IP address 20.1.1.10 and /24. Similar give on eth1, and here name if is outside, and the IP address is 30.11. Okay, so we did the configuration, and now let's check the IP. Show interface IP brief. So 30.11 and 20.10 we have here. Okay, so now we did the configuration on the interfaces. Okay, so let me try to check now what next. Now we can try are we able to form telnet connection, because we did, and by default TCP traffic is inspecting, right? So I will try to send data to this R3 first. Okay, so let me do from here telnet 30.1.1.3. So I'm trying to do telnet, but see the telnet connection. Okay, wait for it. See, the telnet connection is not working. So just on R3 we can debug TCP, debug IP, TCP packet, right? So just to see are we receiving any packet on R3. So let me try again from R1. Okay, we generated the traffic, and let me check on R3. Are we receiving the logs? Yeah, we are receiving the logs. And what are the logs, guys? Try to check. Okay, so there is TCP listen from this, and there is synchronization is received. Okay, and now bad segment, bad number. Okay, so there is some problem because R3 is not able to get acknowledgement. It's not receiving any acknowledgement because of some TCP timeout, right? So like R3 sending reply back to ASA, so that means traffic is coming from R1 to R3, R3 also giving back reply. So there is some problem on firewall when sending back traffic to R1, right? So for that what we can do, change into the context one, and here we can just do one thing, logging enable, logging console 7, so just to debug the packets, right? And again do that. Okay, see the traffic is here for outside. Mm-hmm. Come on. Okay, let me show you. So what is the problem? So we have here now shared interface, right? So if you check, not here, move to the, yeah, check here, show interface it one, right? So you can check what is the MAC address, that this is the MAC address in your context one, right? And similar, if I check, change to context C2 and show interface it 2. So here we have this, my bad, the interface number is it1. So in that case we have same MAC address on this interface for context 1 and the context 2. So what will happen in that case, when the traffic is coming on R3 and when R3 send back, so at layer 2 it will use same MAC address for 30.10 and 30.11. so the firewall is not able to recognize which traffic it's receiving for context 1 or the context 2 because of the same MAC address of the interface for both IPs. Why? Because at layer 2 the MAC address same. If you check on R3, R3 is receiving same MAC address for both IPs. See, 30.10 and 30.11 is giving same MAC address to R3. So when R3 is giving back this traffic, so when firewall is receiving traffic, okay, just a minute. Okay, see, so the traffic is coming from here and here also, right? So here is MAC address is A, and suppose this have MAC address B, and here this interface is same, so MAC address A, and here is B, because this have same MAC address. So when traffic is going back, so source is B and destination is A, and here also traffic is going back, source is B and destination is A. So in that case, when firewall is receiving traffic on this particular interface, so firewall check, okay, the MAC address is same A and A, so how I am going to be differentiate traffic belongs to context 1 or the context 2? So there is no differentiation in that case. So what is the first thing? You can change the MAC address, like in context 2 I can change the MAC address, and in context 1 also I can change the MAC address, okay, like MAC address 2 and MAC address 1. So this will give me a differentiation at layer 2. So in that case, firewall can find out the traffic belongs to, like if I'm going to change the MAC address, and here I'm going to change the MAC address like 0A, and here is 0B. So destination is B here, and here also B, right? So in that case, if traffic is coming back like this, so source is B and destination is 0A, and when traffic is coming back here, source is B, B is MAC address of R3, okay, and destination is 0B. So here is 0B destination, and here is 0A. So 0A belong to C1 context and 0B belong to C2 context. So at layer 2 we will get the differentiation. So then firewall can transmit the data, right? So similar we are achieving here. So the first thing I can do on interface level by myself on firewall. So right now we are under the context. Okay, I guess where I can change it. Yeah, under the context we have to change it. So I'm moving into this one, and I'm moving to the interface eth1 and MAC address. Okay, before that, show interface eth1 MAC address. So I will copy the same MAC address, and like this is A for me, okay, and the context number 2, same interface, okay, this is the MAC address, and now let me change it. Make it here BBBB, okay, and now if you want to check show interface eth1, so now MAC address is changed here, right? So if we check on R3 maybe have get the, see, now R3 is getting the new MAC addresses from the firewall, because ARP is exchanged already between them, okay, during the configuration of the MAC. And now let me again check the traffic flow. So now I'm going to make telnet connection again. So now I'm getting the telnet, right? So what is the first option? The first option, you can change the MAC address of interface in every context. This is the first option you have, okay, okay, and now let's remove it. Wait a minute. The interface is okay. Context C1, interface eth1, and no MAC address, right? The MAC address is here, this one, okay. So now if you check show interface eth1, so we have again same interface MAC address, right? If you check on R3, same MAC address, right? So we will get, like, so we get the same error here. Now we can move under the change to system, and we have here command. Wait a minute, what was the command? MAC address auto. Okay, so this command you need to configure and it will convert the MAC address. And if you check now, change to context C1 and show interface it1. See, the MAC address is here now, this one, it's changed, right? And similar, if you check, here is different MAC address, right? So both context have now different MAC address. And if you check on R3, these are the MAC addresses. I hope this is clear. Okay, so this is the second option. You can use the auto command, but let me remove my auto command. If you try, you can even do the telnet and all these things. So right now connection is working, right, because of different MAC address. But if I am going to remove this command, what is the third option? So that is change to system. Okay, and now MAC address auto. So we removed the command. So I'm hoping again we are getting the same MAC addresses. Okay, and I can verify from R3 directly. See, I'm getting the same. So what is the third option? So third option is we can do the pat configuration. What is the third option, guys? Third option is we can do the pat configuration in that case. Okay, so in both security context we will do the pat configuration, so that will also help us. So let's try. So ASA, change to context C1, and here object network pat1. Okay, and we need to give here subnet. Subnet is this. Okay, okay, and now give the net inside, outside, dynamic interface, right? So we did here, and after that change to context to object network. Here also I'm giving pat1, and subject is, sorry, subnet is 20 here, right? And the command is same, so just do that. And now we can check. If I try telnet admin Cisco, I'm getting here, and on R2 do the telnet 30.3, and we are getting here also, you can see, right? So if you check on R3, like who is logged, so just use this command and you will check. We have two line VTY connection here, and you will get the netted IP here because we are using interface. So with interface, because of net translation, they can verify it. They can verify it. Okay, see, here is 10 and here is 11. So this 11 is output of here actually. Come on. Okay, and if you check on firewall, show con, so we have here connection. See, so 20.2 is converting into 30.11. So because of this connection, they know. And here we have 10.1 which is translating into 30.10. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So this is the second option, guys.